Hey folks, this is Rhykker with the Diablo 3 Season 27 Monk Build Guide. This guide is for the Legacy of Dreams Wave of Light Monk, which gets a massive buff in Season 27 thanks to the Sanctified items. Yep, the rich keep getting richer, so this will be the best monk build in the game and arguably the best build in the game, period. Season 27 sees the introduction of Sanctified items. Basically, you're going to find something, a new item type called an Angelic Crucible, similar to a Ramaladni's gift. You use this, it is a consumable, you apply it to an item, and it transforms that item into a sanctified item. A sanctified item is rerolled as a primal, and then gains one of 3 random legendary properties specific to your class. And you can only have one of these equipped at a time, that's how strong they are. So for this build, the one that we're looking for is Casting Wave of Light now summons a bell at the target location that deals damage when any player attacks the bell. Up to 7 bells can be active at one time. This is a buff that also changes the gameplay of this build. So in this video, we're going to cover the gear, the skills, and the playstyle that you want to rock this build. And the gameplay you're seeing in the background is by pro player Northwar, and you can also follow along with the written version of this guide once it's been updated on maxroll.gg. Link will be in the description. Now, as we dive in, we're going to specify that the Inna Monk got a nerf this season. However, Inna Monks are still really good for speedrunning. But for Greater Rift pushing, eventually, this build, which is difficult to put together, it requires a high investment, but you can build up to it throughout the season. This one will be topping the charts. So we'll start by taking a look at some of the gear that we're going to use. Now, to begin with, this is a Legacy of Dreams build. We're not using a set, we're using the LoD Legendary Gem that makes it that while you have no set bonuses equipped, you can have items as long as you don't have a set bonus. Every legendary item you have equipped increases your damage dealt and reduces your damage taken, and then this bonus is doubled for ancient items. So of course you want to be aiming to get ancient versions, or primal for that matter, of any gear we talk about. But some pieces are more important than others. Some of those more important pieces here include the Incense Torch of the Grand Temple. This item is a must-have for this build. This reduces the spirit cost of Wave of Light by 50%, allowing us to spam it a lot more easily, and increases its damage by 550%. You're going to want to put this in the cube, because this is one of 3 weapons that we need, the other 2 being one-handed fist weapons. One of them is Kiyoshiro's Blade. It increases the damage of Wave of Light, and when the initial impact of Wave of Light hits 3 or fewer enemies, increases the damage even more. This build is really good at clearing screens of enemies, so we need some help as well dealing with single target. And the other weapon we need is the Rabid Strike. Spirit spenders that teleport you while Epiphany is active are also mimicked on a nearby target with increased damage and for free. These 3 items together, these 3 weapons, are massive multipliers to our Wave of Light damage. Absolute must-haves. Another must-have item is the Tsokrin's Gaze Spirit Stone, and you want to have this equipped and not in the cube. Why? As a non-legendary property, as a primary affix, we get 150% extra damage to Wave of Light. And as a legendary property, it allows us to cast Wave of Light where our mouse cursor is. Typically, this allowed this build to be very ranged, but the Sanctified power is going to actually change that around. We're still summoning our bells wherever we want, but now we need to be hitting our bells. So the playstyle, again, will be quite different. Another must-have item is the Pinto's Pride Bracers. Wave of Light also slows enemies and deals increased damage. Another great multiplier, and applying a crowd control. Another necessary item is the Crudest Boots. Mystic Ally summons 2 Mystic Allies that fight by your side. They deal 200% increased damage and are able to attack with their active forms longer. This is not a Mystic Ally build. However, our Rabid Strike, which summons a clone, is treated as a Mystic Ally. So this 200% damage multiplier applies to our Rabid Strike clone. We're also going to be working into this build Mystic Ally, not for damage, but just for utility effects, and this will double the utility effect. Next, a Cinder Coat chest armor. Again, not on the cube, because as a primary property, fire skills deal 20% more damage. We are a fire build. But furthermore, reduces the resource cost of fire skills by 30%. Wave of Light is really resource thirsty, so getting all of these reduction multipliers really help us spam it. Then lastly, Blackthorn's Jousting Mail. Just the one set item. Again, we're not going to break our Legacy of Dreams, but these are pants that can roll with elemental damage, and we're going to want them to roll with fire damage as a primary affix. Now we're going to work some extra items into the build to further buff its damage and toughness. First off, as a shoulder piece, Lefebvre's Soliloquy. Cyclone Strike reduces your damage taken by 50% for 5 seconds. This is an important source of damage reduction. We're going to benefit from this at all times. Next, we'll want the Bindings of the Lesser Gods Bracers. Enemies hit by your Cyclone Strike take 200% increased damage from your Mystic Ally for 5 seconds. Split Fire allies gain 3 times this bonus. Another damage multiplier. And remember, our Rabbit Strike clone counts as a Mystic Ally, so it will benefit from this Bindings of the Lesser Gods buff. Since we're recommending 2 bracers, one of them goes in the cube, one of them is equipped. Whichever one you get that rolls better, equip that one, cube the other. We're going to take a Witching Hour belt. It's simply the most DPS heavy belt in the game, rolling with attack speed and crit damage, which you cannot get on any other belt. We're going to take a Squirt's Necklace amulet. While you're not taking damage, the damage you deal is increased by up to 100%, and the damage you take is increased up to 50%. Now, oftentimes we're not going to be benefiting from squirts. It's tough to not be taking damage. So this is why this is not a mandatory piece. If you want to go with something else, you can. But when we're in a shield pylon, or when we're going to have our Serenity up, we will be able to benefit from it for a bit. Then we'll want to take an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. Reduce the remaining cooldown of one of your skills by 1 second when you hit with a resource spending attack. We're going to be doing that a lot, so we're going to be reducing our cooldowns a lot. And we're going to have some pretty cooldown heavy skills, so this will come in very handy. We'll also want to work in for maximum damage, a convention of elements. With this, you have a rotating damage buff that goes through all the elements. 4 seconds per element. When we're in our fire window, that's when we want to be dealing as much damage as possible. Another ring that'll come in very handy for solo runs will be a Unity Ring. All damage taken is split between wearers of this item. This is only good for solo and only if you put a Unity also on your follower, as well as the token that renders your follower invulnerable, because this has the effect of doubling your toughness. This build can be pretty squishy, especially at lower paragons. That said, if you are running in groups, then instead of a Unity, you can go with a Stone of Jordan. As a primary affix, you can get more fire damage here, allowing you to squeeze out a little bit more damage overall. We'll also want to work in Stone Gauntlets. Getting hit increases your armor by 50%, but reduces your movement speed by 15% and attack speed by 20%. This effect stacks up to 5 times. Really solid defensive buff, but applying a really nasty crowd control to ourselves. We're only taking this because we want to maintain 100% uptime on Epiphany, which breaks crowd control, meaning we only get the positive and none of the negative effect of the Stone Gauntlets. Now, we'll go over exactly what we want on every piece of gear, but first, a look at the skills. We're taking Wave of Light, Explosive Light as our main damage dealer. Explosive Light is the best area of effect rune for Wave of Light. We're taking Mystic Ally, Air Ally as a Spirit Potion. Again, we're going to be running real Spirit Thirsty, and so this will let us regain a lot of Spirit real fast because it's being doubled by our Crudest Boots. We're taking Epiphany, Desert Shroud. This will give us 50% damage reduction. We need to stay in Epiphany or we will die. And further, while we're in Epiphany, we're going to be teleporting to monsters with our melee attacks. We'll take Cyclone Strike, Implosion. Cyclone Strike triggers our Lefebvre's, triggers our Bindings of the Lesser Gods. Implosion reaches out further. This is also altogether a really good grouping tool to bring monsters together. We're going to take Serenity. You are enveloped in a protective shield that absorbs all incoming damage for 3 seconds and grants immunity to all control impairing effects. We don't need that last part, we have Epiphany for that. But that 3-second immunity, which is increased to 4 seconds with the Ascension rune, can help us save our Squirt's Necklace while also saving our life. For mobility, we're going to take Dashing Strike, and we're going to take the Blinding Speed rune for a 40% increased dodge chance for 4 seconds. If you successfully dodge an attack, you take 0 damage from that attack. For our passives, we're going to take Beacon of Etar, which reduces all cooldowns by 20%, helping us use all these powers more often, especially combined with our Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. We'll take Seize the Initiative. This gives us a 30% attack speed buff when hitting enemies who are above 75% health, which really helps to whittle down enemies when we're at the start of a combat. For extra toughness, we're going to take Harmony. 40% of your single elemental resistances from items instead increases your resistances to all elements. And lastly, we'll take the Guardian's Path. When dual wielding, you gain a 35% chance to dodge incoming attacks. Again, dodge chance combines very well with our Squirt's necklace. Now, if you want, you can substitute one of these for near-death experience, which gives you that extra life. As for exactly what we want on every piece of gear, we'll note first off that there's no cooldown breakpoint. Get as much as you possibly can get. And this is because while we do have an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, because of what the Sanctified Power does to our Wave of Light, as in it lays down a bell and that bell does not deal damage, that will not trigger our Orots, our Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. Instead, only our Cyclone Strike will be doing so we need to stack even more cooldown than we used to. So get cooldown everywhere you can other than on your amulet. So for your shoulders, Dexterity, Vitality, Area Damage, Cooldown Reduction. This is an area damage build. You want to stack as much area damage as possible. For your helm, Dex, Vitality, Crit Chance, Wave of Light damage. Diamond in the helm for more cooldown. For your amulet, Fire damage, Crit Chance, Crit damage. Your gauntlets, Crit Chance, Crit damage, cooldown, area damage. Your chest, Fire damage, Dex, reduces damage from elites. Your bracers, Fire damage, Dex, Crit Chance, and life per hit. We're hitting very rapidly, so we'll be gaining back life very rapidly. Your belt, Dex, Vitality, Attack Speed, Crit Chance. Pants, Fire damage, Dex, Vitality, all resist. Your boots, Dex, Vitality, all resist, Wave of Light damage. Your rings, depending on what rings you are equipping, you definitely want cooldown, then Crit Chance and Crit damage if you can fit them on there. On a Unity, you would have Crit Chance, cooldown, and increased damage against elites. On a Stone of Jordan, you would have Fire damage, increased damage against elites, cooldown reduction. For your weapons, you want on both of them cooldown reduction and area damage. On your Rabid Strike, this naturally rolls with crit damage on it. Keep that. On your Kyoshiros, get life per hit. Of course, emeralds in your weapons, and in your chest and pants, go for diamonds for more all resist and thus toughness. For your legendary gems, of course, you have to get a Legacy of Dreams. Apart from that, you're going to get an Enforcer. It increases the damage of your pets, and your pets take less damage. Our Rabid Strike clone counts as a pet. This is a massive damage multiplier for us. And then for our last gem, for Greater Rift Pushing, when it's taking very long to kill the Rift Guardian, we get a Bane of the Stricken. Attacks you make against an enemy increases the damage it takes from your attacks by a small percent, and you gain 25% increased damage against the Rift Guardian. This means the longer you're attacking the same enemy, you are building up a scaling, rising damage buff against them. If instead you're doing faster speed content, where it's not taking really long to kill the Rift Guardian, take a Bane of the Trapped. This increases damage against enemies under the effects of crowd control effects by 60%, and at level 25, it starts to emit its own CC aura. Now, for the playstyle. Rule number 1, keep Epiphany up at all times. Pop Cyclone Strike at least once every 5 seconds to maintain your Lefebvre's buff. And then for when you're actually attacking enemies, you're going to cast Wave of Light 4 times. This will lay down 7 bells. Then Dashing Strike into the middle of the bells, and you want to be Dashing Strike at least once every 4 seconds to maintain that dodge chance buff. And once you're in the middle of your bells, you then Cyclone Strike. You'll have to pop it 3 to 4 times, and this is going to destroy your bells. It'll also trigger your Orots. Remember, the bells are only dealing damage when you attack the bell, when you deal damage to the bell, and our Cyclone Strike will be doing that. Once you've destroyed your bells, then you summon more bells, and you repeat again with your Cyclone Strike. Now, to work this into a rotation, fire is your damage window. So when you're at the start of your physical rotation, you stop focusing on killing enemies, and you start focusing on destroying any remaining bells you have. Use Cyclone Strike to do that. You want to make sure that your Epiphany is either been recently cast, or it's ready to cast again soon, because you want to ensure you're in Epiphany when you really need it. So if you need to reset the cooldown on Epiphany, spam more Cyclone Strike. And if you need the extra spirit in order to spam more Cyclone Strike, then also hit your Mystic Ally. Then when you are 1 second into your cold rotation, you cast Wave of Light 4 times. This sets up all your bells. And if you're playing solo and you have an Oculus Ring on your follower, this will also form an Oculus Circle in the middle of your bells. You then dash into your Oculus Circle, and then as your fire rotation goes up, you start slamming your Cyclone Strike. If you're really having spirit issues, you can change the rune on Cyclone Strike to Eye of the Storm. This will reduce its resource cost. As for Serenity, well, you want to cast that when you think you need to. Don't just spam it non-stop off cooldown. You want to save it for when you're actually going to be hit. Now, if you're doing speed greater rifts instead of pushing, another change you can make is you can swap out your stone gauntlets for Saint Archu's Gauge. The first time an elite pack damages you, gain an absorb shield for 150% of your max life for 10 seconds. This will help us maintain our Squirt's Necklace buff. If you're doing speed content outside of greater rifts, T16, regular rifts, bounties, Echoing Nightmares, you actually don't want to use the Sanctified Power. Yes, it makes you deal more damage, but it slows you down so much, and it is way overkill for this easier content. So if you want to run with a Sanctified item for that easier content, you can just make sure it's any other Sanctified Power so that it does not, in fact, impair your ability to do damage quickly. It's still advantageous to have a Sanctified item because it is a guaranteed primal. So when you're picking what item to sanctify, ideally weapon or amulet is what you'll get the most out of. Getting a weapon to roll its max possible value is a huge advantage, as well as a necklace to have that perfect 20, 100, 10, that's a dream. For your follower, we'll want to take the Enchantress. For her skills, we are taking Temporal Pulse for the slow, Prophetic Harmony for the cooldown, Powered Shield for the damage reduction and armor, and Focused Mind for the attack speed. We're going to give her the Smoking Thurible Immortality Relic so that she can't die. We're going to give her a Unity Ring, because we're going to have one for ourselves. And then other important gear will be primarily things that emanate. So the Flavor of Time emanates to us. Pylon effects last twice as long. Nemesis Bracers. Shrines will spawn an enemy champion. Emanates to us. We'll also want to give her an Oculus Ring. Whenever you kill an enemy, there's a chance of spawning a golden pool on the ground. Stand in it and you will deal 85% increased damage. Give her Ice Climbers to make her immune to freeze and immobilize effects so that she's always active and not impaired when you need her. And then for the rest, it's really about stacking intelligence and attack speed. New to Season 27 is buffs to the Guardian set. You gain an additional 100% of your base strength, dex, intelligence, and vitality from equipped items. Now, right off the bat, followers already benefit more from these attributes than we do, but all of the followers' abilities, in this case the Enchantress, scales off intelligence. So if you can work in that Guardian set bonus there, that's going to maximize her much more rapidly. For your Paragon points, you want to max out your move speed, then your max spirit, then your dexterity. However, if you are feeling too squishy, you can put into vitality. At the very least, you want to reach at least 750,000 life. For offense, cooldown reduction, crit chance, crit damage, attack speed. Defense, all resist, life percent, armor, life regen. Utility, area damage, resource cost reduction, life per hit, and pickup radius. And that's going to wrap up this video. But do stay tuned for more D3 guides, as well as a tier list on the best builds for Season 27. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.